Hello, and welcome to Doctor Who 50 Years Ago, the show that looks back to the episode that aired in 1967 and looks at what's different between then and now. This week, the Underwater Menace Episode 2, still the product of Jeffrey Orme. I am Ben.
I am Luke.
And I am Nick.
And here we are, and here we go into the news from 1967. On Sunday the 15th of January, Harold Wilson arrived in Rome to begin negotiations for the UK to gain membership of the European Economic Community, also known as the Common Market. Or, oh dear, just to give it political balance. Yes, 50 years later, this is a thing that is not happening anymore. Or rather, we're beginning negotiations for leaving said once upon a time market, now fully fledged European Union. So it's very interesting, the differences of opinion between 50 years ago and now.
Yeah.
On Monday the 16th of January, the first fetal exchange, transfusion, on a human being was done in London.
The march of technology goes on.
Progress, and hopefully reduces mortality rates as well.
Mm.
So it's quite interesting that we've got prolonging life last week with the cryogenics.
Yep.
And this week we've got starting it better as well.
Yeah.
So we're extending both ends. Infant mortality is going down successfully, but of course staying alive, that's not quite developed yet, but it's getting there.
On that same day, China publicly published photographs of the public humiliation of government officials shamed in the Cultural Revolution.
Well, basically, we're doing it because you have to be chipper about it, otherwise it's sort of like you're going to cry. So,
oh, China. Lovely China. On Tuesday the 17th of January, the President of Chile was denied by his Senate permission to leave the country to meet President Johnson under Article 43 of its constitution, which was to deny him travel to prevent him from absconding with the national treasury. In reality, this was brought up in protest against the United States and probably Vietnam.
Yeah, and of course this is before the coup where Pinochet was brought to power.
Yes.
So Chile is still a lovely democratic country at this point.
Institution, yes.
Yes.
In space! On Wednesday, the 18th of January, the United States Air Force launched 8 communication satellites into orbit on a Titan 3C rocket, increasing its global girdling satellite communications network to 15 satellites. So that's progress for global communications.
We're starting to see the beginnings of the satellite network, which nowadays, so much of our lives is dependent on these satellites that orbit the Earth. And I think by this point, people realise that satellites were the future and were going to be very important. Arthur C. Clarke had...
That's why all the satellites were being connected together in a favourite story of mine called The War Machines. Telstar was up there.
And of course, America was a lot further ahead of this, that they were already starting to use satellite television.
I think it's interesting that America used satellites in a very different way to us. Because their country is so much bigger. They have so much space to deal with. Whereas we, if we had to, can lay cables. We've got pylons and things. We have that cable network. However, in America, there's so much space. And there's so much space between spaces that a satellite is brilliant.
And finally, on Saturday the 21st of January, the MacHack computer program almost defeated a Massachusetts Institute of Technology student, MIT, at chess. This is just showing how the advancements of artificial intelligence and computing and all that jazz.
It's impressive that it's that early on.
As sci-fi movies go on, we'll see this chess versus human thing come up a lot more. In 2001, A Space Odyssey, we have a very intelligent computer, and that has that little spark of being what we define as human. But the humans in that, they're incredibly vacant and passive. So there's that extension of it into the future of the machines becoming more human than man, because we're putting all of our humanity into them and we're losing it ourselves. I think that's a genuine fear of the time.
That was the news. And now we shall get into the Underwater Menace episode 2. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to an episode that exists in its entirety, with moving footage and faces and presumably bums. Everything exists in this episode. It's okay, I guess.
For the first time we've got a moving image on the screen again. It's not actually the best. This is probably the worst episode of the serial.
It could have been worse. It could have been The Highlanders episode 3.
Oh, God.
Well, it could have been typhoid. I mean, your points are relevant.
Okay.
But, yeah. It's a shame it's this one. I feel like it would be nicer to have episode 1 or episode 4. I don't know. I haven't seen episode 4 yet, but I'm just anticipating episode 4 will be quite visual as well of the Underwater
Well,
Menace.
there are rare moments of quality, including the laughing battle.
Yeah, I just think it would be nicer to either have episode 1 or 4 than episode 2.
By this point, the novelty of it being a B-movie had very much worn off, and there was very little for me to hang on to in this one.
This one is quite dull. I think it's because the previous one was setting the tone and the atmosphere. This one, he actually needs to set up the plot, because that was left at the very end. Like, yeah, to figure out. Here's where you actually find out what the plot of the serial is, isn't it? When Zaroff goes on his like, I'm the bad guy, Doctor. You're the good guy, and I'm going to explain my entire plan to you in intimate detail so that you know how to stop me.
Yeah, and then the Doctor goes and explains plan to other people, just to make sure you know what's going on.
Yes,
It's very nice.
but it's a very talky one. This one.
You say that. However, we'll see throughout this one, when Troughton's in the background,
Oh yes.
the way he looks at things, the way he uses his face,
His acting.
he's so expressive, and you can tell he's working everything out. It's what I really wanted to see in Power of the Daleks.
It's so visual, yeah.
Yeah.
This one at least is notable. It isn't. The serial as a whole doesn't seem that boring.
So yeah, this episode exists. That is it. That is it.
Yes, but
There are a few features, but it's quite boring. So it all evens out in the end. Let's have a look at it then. The Doctor saves Polly from being turned into a fish by fiddling with the power supply in Zaroff's laboratory and stealing things. Zaroff tells of how Atlantis survived whilst the Doctor humours the madman. Damon and his wonderful eyebrows complain with Zaroff for losing power supply, letting the Doctor cut the supply completely. Ara is left with Polly and the two escape, and the Doctor gets very few repercussions from doing so.
Yeah.
That's how you resolve a cliffhanger, I suppose. Again, it's all down to, as you said, Troughton's acting and how he works it out in the background and does all these things, and then cuts the power supply with a pair of pliers.
This flashed me back to was in the Highlanders, when you'd have those moments of peril, which are sorted out immediately afterwards. And if you weren't looking at Troughton in this episode, you'd think, oh, okay, so he cuts the power. But when you see Troughton furrow his brow and you see him sneak over to things, and you think, that just works. But when you see him playing off everyone and catching out all the little bits,
It's so visual.
and it really pulls you in. And I think maybe we did some disservice to the Highlanders. Maybe all of those moments looked really good when the Doctor was sorting things out. Maybe he was doing all of these things.
That is the trouble of surviving episodes of Doctor Who that are audio only, when it's purely made for a visual medium.
Yes.
Polly and Ara hide in the caves while the Doctor humours Zaroff and learns of how Atlantis will rise in the most bizarre way fashionable. The oceans will fall into the Earth's core, which will be a rude awakening for the Rachnos, and then it'll all explode. So there. The thing is, this bad science is meant to be bad. Zaroff knows that this will make the planet explode and wants it to happen because science. And then the most wonderful laughter battle ensues.
This put me in the mind of the Caves of Androzani, when Sharaz Jek, he takes people who are beautiful and smart, and he takes them and he sort of creates this little family out of them. So the fact that Zaroff is doing this with humour sort of makes him the Sharaz Jack of laughs.
It does, really, yeah. This bizarre little East German clown. Yeah.
The destruction of the world. The scientist's dream of absolute power. And it has all of this dramatic stuff over it.
Only with a bit more German accent.
Oh, yeah. But I know by now not to attempt accents.
Okay.
You can tell the differences between then and now. Because back then, this was supposed to just be something cheesy and uplifting. And, so, Mr. Bond, you found me and my cat. Aha!
Octopus, but yeah.
And it shows that nowadays we're not really into the sort of B-movie schlock. We're more into the Dark Knight. Batman is a perfect representation of this between 60s and modern Batman, without trying to get too far into that sort of thing.
In the mines, Ben and Jamie work hard, to the same extent that men at work hard, and with slackers, Jacko and Sean, under some very heavy background noise.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
One thing is that the sets, like the set of this mine and the sets in general in this episode, which now, as it's moving, we actually can see it better, look pretty decent. They clearly spent a lot of money on this.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them as well. That adds to the confined nature of the program.
This is not like Part of the Daleks where they had a corridor set and maybe a couple of other sets. Maybe like 2 or 3 sets or 4 sets.
The Doctor works on Damon, who talks of his conversion of shipwrecked people to fish people. Some more body horror for you.
Yeah, I found that a bit. That's a bit dark. I mean, it makes sense, but it's a bit dark. Like again, the fish people are just this unnecessary dark thing that are in it.
Yes, yeah. We're going to rise Atlantis. We're going to blow up the world. We're going to turn people into fish. Like what? Yeah, it's just a cut above the rest, isn't it? Mm. And then the Doctor escapes of his own volition with a stink bomb. I think he's allowed to work on the scientific laboratory benches whilst talking to Damon, and then he just throws some concoction and smoke happens and he leaves. That's Patrick Troughton for him. Polly is taken by Ara to hide in the temple behind the face of Ando, which truly spits in the face of religion.
This is very interesting for me as a symbol which is prevalent throughout all of Doctor Who. It's the face of the god. It comes up very heavily in the face of evil.
Yes.
It comes up in the girl who died in 2014. 2015.
Was that long ago?
And it's the idea that when gods are manifested in any way, they must be fake. And it's interesting that it's always the face in Doctor Who. The face of evil, the head of Odin, face of Ando. And it's always just a puppet. And it also reminds me of Zardoz in the 80s, or maybe it's the 70s, with Sean Connery in it. That's another one of those false god faces.
Ben and Jamie learn of how the food goes bad, which is a very key plot point, before they learn of Jacko and Sean's plan to escape from the mines. And they do so with help from the extras.
Yeah. I'm going to say that the food thing in this is so stupid, though. The food goes off after 2 hours, and he's telling me they can't refrigerate anything. He's got a lab. He doesn't have fridges.
Well, he's literally starting again in an underwater civilization.
But he's got big supercomputers. If he's got them there, then clearly he can...
He's got a nuclear reactor. Nuclear reactor, no fridge. It's pure civilization theory.
It makes no sense. And food doesn't spoil in 2 hours. Are they not cooking the fish? It lasts at least a day.
His whole purpose is to make the food for the colony. But in 20 years he hasn't figured anything out, except he's made people into fish, which is sort of destroying the colony, really. If we see in the air zone solution, as was brought up last week, that people don't like being turned into fish, so it's very difficult to pitch to a room. What we're going to do, right, we've got these operations, we're going to rip holes in your neck and you're going to go underwater and you can't speak properly anymore.
Well, this was given to shipwrecked people, as it was just said. These are the people who had no hope. Like later on in 1968, The Enemy of the World, these were people who were told a nuclear war was happening. Of course they're going to go underground and cause subversion by triggering earthquakes. Key spoiler alert. But yeah, it's giving hope to people. Okay, you're going to have to become fish, but you will survive. Okay, you're going to have to become Cybermen, but you will survive.
I suppose it's that survival instinct that's overwhelming all.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it just means you're going to turn into a fish.
Very horrible fish.
A very horrible fish, yes. Yeah.
A little detail about this scene that I liked was there's all the extras, and there's Ben and Jamie, and they're trying to go to the new bit. And there's the foreman, and he says, okay, you and you are going. Ben and Jamie, because obviously they're sharing lines, just have to repeat, I volunteer. No, you're too new. So
Yes.
there's that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very endemic shot of the time. It's one of those little details I like.
Lovely. The Doctor hides and he finds a wetsuit. It's something to dress up in. Oh, God. It's once again showing the evolution of Patrick Troughton's second Doctor, finding disguises to disguise himself in. He learns that Polly's safe and well from Ada, and then he goes off to find the Chief of State. Also listening in to Damon and the priest Ramo complaining about Zaroff and how he's doing weird things to the people of Atlantis. And something that the Doctor exploits once Damon is led away by Ara. He finds Ramo.
This is the second Doctor that I love. This is the second Doctor that we had in The Power of the Daleks.
The manipulative one, yes.
He knows how to play people off against each other. He's in the right place at the right time. And through his skill, he's able to really build off of that luck. And it's so brilliant. It's not in the Highlanders when he was doing voices and dressing in drag, and it was just horrible. This is so intelligent and manipulative and cunning. This is what the Doctor should be. It's what Sylvester McCoy ended up really owning towards the end. And it's what Matt Smith did a lot in his first season. And it's really alien because his intelligence is so high. He's picking out things that we don't know. He's able to get along with everyone. I think it's so good. It really plays up the aspects of the character which really make him.
No, Troughton is the best thing in this serial. He really rises so far above the material. It just shows how incredible an actor he was.
Yeah, how blooming lucky we were having to has the Doctor.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing that he agreed to take on the role.
That
really.
chain of circumstances. There we go. Ben and Jamie, Jacko and Sean remain lost in the caves. Polly hides from the Doctor and Ramo in the Temple of Amdo, where the Doctor performs a scientific experiment to show how Zaroff will destroy Atlantis, convincing Ramo and the audience. He asks the Doctor to convince the ruler of Atlantis of what he's just been seeing in his scientific experiment. And so he has to wait before he can go and visit him. And he does so by playing the recorder. Yeah. Again, this is science and rationality versus the irrationality of religion. And convincing people using intelligence, not to dissociate it from religion.
Yeah, it's a nice way of explaining to the audience, or like children, what the bad guy's plan is, basically. It's a nice visual way of doing
even if the pot explodes far more explosively than it would have done.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's there's a little explosive in there, as opposed to it would just crack open, it wouldn't explode like that. But
yeah, that better not be in the water supply of Atlantis. Ooh.
But yeah, so it's a nice visual. I would say you probably wouldn't have. You do need it to be explained to the Doctor, I suppose. But again, I think it just further sent home the point that this serial is kind of aimed at kids.
Yes, yeah.
It's very much like, I think at the time kids would have found it good, but no one else.
I think this is a good time to talk about the music in this serial. Because what's interesting about this, that I really picked up on, and which I immediately knew this was Dudley, is that there's this load of weird synth music over the explanation. It doesn't really need to be there in a talkie scene, but I think it picks out how Dudley really forefronts his style. He really forefronts himself by putting music over so many things with really distinctive musical cues.
Okay.
Whether or not they work, which sometimes they don't.
And then that's a trial and error process.
It is the trial and error process that wouldn't really pay off until Tom Baker hits.
Yeah.
Mm.
This has got very un-60s music to it. So I can see why you instantly could tell it was Dudley, because it doesn't sound 60s at all. It's got more music in it than most serials of the 60s as well.
Yes.
It gets even more noticeable in episode 3.
Oh yes, yeah. It's a sight to behold and listen to.
And there was relatively little music in episode 1.
Yeah.
I guess, again, that was to help establish the atmosphere, and the music is then reflecting a rising tension.
Yeah, in action.
Rising tension in action, yeah.
Mm.
Comparing this to the present day, we have our staff composer, Murray Gold. He puts so much music over everything. So some of these, there must be 20 minutes of music composed. We can't really blame him for his current demise of originality a lot of the time, because there's so much in it. But then it's so obvious when there's some music. The Highlanders had no music, Smugglers had no music. When the music is there, it's obvious. Nowadays, we expect a full orchestra.
And it blends in. Yeah, I notice. It's rare. Oftentimes you just don't notice it.
The Doctor gets himself another disguise and is taken to the ruler of Atlantis, while Ben and Jacko rescue Jamie from falling down some cliffs. Giving the character something to do, I think.
Yep.
Even if it is fall off a cliff.
Yep. This is very obvious padding.
It's not the greatest tension in the world, is it? Because it's not very well shot.
It reminds me of the scene in The Daleks. Yeah. That one. It's just there to waste about 2 minutes or so.
Or 20 in the case of the Daleks.
Yeah. This is just a not as ridiculous version of that.
Yeah. Not very well shot, probably because of the constrained studio that they had. Poor things. At least it's not the least steep incline in the world in 5 Doctors.
Oh, yeah. No.
There we go. Eventually, Ben, Jacko and Jamie arrive at the temple under the face of Ando, meeting up with Polly. Ara helps out the companions and they hide away during another religious ceremony, which goes on throughout the serial. There are many religious ceremonies, they're constant. It's almost as if they're indoctrinating the people of Atlantis, I'd say.
This is very similar to the Macra Terror that we'll see in a couple of months. There's a lot of that sort of thing in there. There's a lot of... They show all the work times. There's a very visual sense of the colony. Here it's the same thing. And it's very engaging. We don't know what the day-to-day life of these people are, but we sort of get what they do generally. We have an idea of their struggles and we see it. We're engaged in it. I feel way more attached to these people and their weirdos in sci-fi than I did the Highlanders, because there was nothing drawing me in. And this also shows how much fakeness there is to the Amdo face. The fact that it goes right into the mind.
It's purely hollow, yeah.
Yeah.
In more ways than one, yeah. And here comes the great intellectual debate of the episode. Faust, the ruler of Atlantis, listens in to the Doctor and Rano's pleas, but eventually he doesn't believe them and gives them away to Professor Zaroff. And there's the cliffhanger.
Here we have yet another Power of the Daleks style, where the Doctor has to convince the authority figure doesn't believe him, and sort of palms him off.
Yeah.
Throughout these two stories, there's a real hatred of the scientists. There's a disrespect towards authority figures. They're both conceited in their own way. and it's just an obvious trope of the time.
And thus ends a very middling episode. 5 or 6 out of 10, I'd say.
I say 5.
5, yeah.
Ultimately, the purpose of this plot is to find out how those Doctor Who episodes fared 50 years ago to the general audience. Again, there's something for kids. The adults probably dealt with their huge drama.
I think it's nonsense. I can imagine that there was someone like mum or dad somewhere wrote to the BBC like, "Oh, BBC, I'm writing to complain about the nonsense you put on last night. I thought it was terribly silly and not at all suitable for, I don't know."
For kids and all that jazz.
Yeah, probably. Even though the kids probably liked it.
What do they know, the voices of reason? Such is the difference between people who watched Doctor Who 50 years ago and now. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. You can find us on Blogspot, which redirects to iTunes, where you can comment and rate us. We're also on Facebook and YouTube, where you can like, comment and subscribe, and other internety things, including Google Plus if you dare. We shall be back next week to tackle episode 3 of The Underwater Menace. I've been Ben.
I have been Luke.
And I've been Nick.
Thank you, and goodbye. And now, an extra bit, just for you.
And this episode is boring-ish, but
It's not the worst.
But it's not like I want to scratch my eyes out like I did after Highlanders.
We're thankful for its existence.
Yeah.
I wanted to scratch my ears off rather than my eyes. Because...
I just want to cut my head off.
And cut!
We've got to have that in.
No!
No, we've got to have that in.
No!
It's so absurd, please.
Please! Please don't! Please!
No!
Please!
But yeah...
Can we put it in the post-credits then?
Yes, fine.
Something, I just gotta...
Yeah, you got to have it.
Great, fine.